Welcome back guys, more on what you just saw later on. Today we're taking a look at the V3000 from Lian. It's big, it's aluminium all round, and it's going to cost you a pretty penny, well, at least in Australia anyway. But before we take a look at that, a quick word from our sponsor. Introducing the new CableMod Pro Series cable kits, a complete professional package to kit your rig out with sleeve perfection. Featuring all new thicker wires and pre-installed cable combs makes cable routing perfecting a breeze. Available in complete power supply replacements which are tailor-made for most common power supply brands, or available in extensions for freedom and flexibility. And with more colour options than you can think of, you'll have no problem finding the right set for your system. So why not next time pick up a set of CableMod Pro Series cables? You'll love them, your friends will love them, and so will your PC. For more information, head to cablemod.com. The V3000 is Lian's ultimate flagship chassis. In fact, you may not have even heard or seen this case until now. Lian quietly slipped this into their lineup with really nothing more than a prototype model at Computex last year. YouTube and the V3000 doesn't result in much bar a few showcase videos. I can only assume for who this case is aimed for, Lian wanted to focus more on their mainstream cases and their new Alpha series lineup. But for us, the V3000 is one glorious piece of case. Being Lian, we have aluminium all around, now not just aluminium exterior, but the whole chassis is aluminium, making it super light, 12 kilograms in fact, which is actually astonishing for a case measuring 625 high, 605 deep, and 245 wide. The V3000 reminds me of the good old days where Lian were notorious for being the only company around to offer monstrous high-end cases at extremely high prices, much like the older PC V2110A and the like. But now times have changed and cases have evolved to our needs. The V3000 drops the support for 12 plus hard drives and 7 optical drives like in the past, and have gone for a more balanced setup. All panels on the V3000 are pull off and push on. The 4mm tempered glass panel is secured on by 2 thumb screws. The bottom of the panel drops in a groove, so 2 screws aren't required at the bottom. I'd say the tint of the glass of the panel is quite dark and has a mirror-like reflection. The front of the case is simple and elegant, with air intake coming from the angled sides with no fine mesh behind. The intake mesh runs from top to bottom, but if you're looking for a high ventilated front intake on a case, you might need to look elsewhere. Apart from the mesh, the only other markings on the front is the new Lian logo and this interesting illuminated addressable RGB strip. I love the simplicity of this, and it gives users the ability to use the included remote to control the color and modes of this strip. Plus, it can be implemented to your motherboard's RGB header. Having this RGB strip react to say CPU or GPU temperature would be really cool. I also like how the front can be completely removed via the ability to connect the RGB strip cable. Taking a look on the inside, we can really see just how much room is inside the chassis. ATX, eATX, dual socket boards, you'll have no issues at all. With the experience of Lian, they know not to cut corners and offer double rows of cable holes for eATX users. There's also 2 GPU brackets which work quite well. While we're looking at the inside, we'll take a look at radiator support. The front can house up to a 360mm, 65mm thick radiator with the front hard drive brackets installed, but once removing these brackets, radiator thickness is basically unlimited. Just to note that the front radiator location is pretty much fixed with only very slight adjusting. It's not a full length rail system like on other cases. Now I did have some issues fitting my EK 360mm radiator at the front, as top I/O for USB etc was in the way. The only way to install this radiator was to have the fans first, then the radiator. I tried a few different brands of radiators and they all had the same issue. With a 40mm thick radiator installed at the front with fans, we still have 200mm of room left in the case to play with. Top will house up to a 420mm radiator, but strangely enough a 480 is not listed on the spec sheet. I managed to fit a 480 up the top, but top ventilation doesn't go all the way. There's also a top radiator bracket that doesn't completely fit a 480mm radiator. Top thickness is very impressive at 85mm of clearance. Also to note that if you do mod a 480 up the top, you won't be able to fit a 360mm at the front. The final radiator location is on the side, which is probably one of my favourite places to house a radiator in a case. Cool air comes in from the outside, through the radiator and straight out the rear side. You'll be able to fit up to a 480mm radiator in this spot with a max thickness of 85mm. This is the only location that does have a removable bracket which works well. There's also plenty of adjustments which should allow you to line up your radiator ports to pass through to the back. Overall, radiator support in the case is good and should be able to handle just about any system you throw in the case. Lian have also provided one res pump bracket in the V3000. This can be installed on the ledge under the hard drive brackets with a few adjustment options. I would have liked this bracket to be able to slide left or right on a rail system. There's also another bracket around the back where the removable hard drive cage can go. This location has been fixed to the case. From a storage point of view, the V3000 is one of the most equipped cases around, supporting a total of 10 mechanical hard drives or 10 SSDs. 6 spots are located towards the front on floating trays, which I really like. These trays are removable, as well as the 3 drive cage around the back. The final location is a 2 drive bracket behind the motherboard tray. There's also a neat 2 SSD location under the motherboard on the extruded ledge. I find for most people wanting to show off their SSDs, this would be the go-to spot. Just to note that all hard drives and SSDs do share the same locations, bar the 2 under the motherboard are SSD only. Power supply location is hidden around the back with a max length of 300mm. I see no issues at all fitting the largest power supplies in the V3000. Front I/O is actually along the top, which I appreciate as it keeps the front nice and clean. Here we see audio ports, HDMI, dual USB 3.0, USB 3.1 Type-C with an actual Gen 2 internal cable, which is nice to see, a reset and power buttons. Alright, now that's pretty much the case covered. If you want to see a little bit more on the build we have released a time-lapse build video, which we normally do. I'll throw that in the description below and you can see all the ins and outs and the hardware we used. I'll talk a little bit about this build today, but I won't go into too much detail. Now, some of the issues I did have with the case, nothing's perfect. Now, there are those 2 SSD spots under the motherboard tray. Now, once they sort of butt together, both of the connectors on each SSD nearly sort of touch each other. Now, if you don't have right angle SATA power and SATA data on each one that shoot them straight down, you will end up hitting with both the SSDs. So you can either have one, or which I did, I managed to find some right angle adapters which works well. Now, the other issue with using right angle adapters, because they go down straight under those SSDs, is your power supply. I had to sort of remove the little, the power supply had like a little tray that sort of sat on it to stop it from sagging. If I removed that tray from the bottom, I could then just sort of drop the power supply down just a fraction. All it was about a screw width, and that allowed the cables to sort of bend and go under. Another issue which I mentioned earlier was that front radiator. As you can see, you have to have the fans first in a push configuration, then the radiator. You can go push, then radiator, then pull, but you can't just do radiator and then pull, because once the radiator is pushed up against the front, it will fail those cables at the very top. Another common thing with aluminium cases, nothing to do with Lian Li, it's just aluminium, it is a fingerprint magnet. I spend a lot of my time cleaning this. I swear to God, it picks up fingerprints even when I'm not touching it. But that's sort of the payoff for having this really nice brushed aluminium. Another thing you might have seen in some of the videos, the case feet on my build do light up white. Now, I did modify those. I actually did that before I started doing any of the review videos, so that's why you've seen them light up. Basically, they do come as is. They come with this sort of a metal sort of casing, and then on top of it is a nice round acrylic block. And with most things like your GPU water blocks and your CPU blocks, how they are lit up is simply they just drill a little hole for a 2.5 or a 5mm LED to pop in, and that is essentially what I did. I managed to just drill through the top down and put in a 5mm white LED, and I did that on each one, and it just plugs into Molex and then they light up white. It's just a shame, if you did see in the videos, that the white I use on these LEDs for the feet don't seem to match any of the other white. It's more of a really bright cool white, whereas I think the other lighting is a little bit warmer. But that's sort of the things you run into when you're sort of trying to get the colors exactly right. Cable space on the rear, I haven't covered. It is pretty good, especially when you can get 3.5-inch mechanical hard drives around the back. You know you're going to have plenty of cable space. I've left this build pretty messy just to show you how much room I can actually fit down there. Now, some of the things I really did like is the amount of space you can fit and hardware you can fit in this case for its sizes. I wouldn't say it's over the top large, but it definitely is a big case. I managed to get the 3 radiators in here, 5 3.5-inch drives, although I had 4 in this build. There was the 5th spot free, and also 3 SSDs. Now that's pretty decent, especially with these size rads. Now the one on the front's not that big, but to be able to fit the 480 60mm at the bottom and the 360 60mm at the top is pretty impressive. It's also very lightweight. I recently had the build in the Fantex Elite. Now I could not lift that to save myself. Now this, I just carry this over on my desk. I even carried it on this little table I made up that has wheels on it. I managed to move that no worries at all. So being aluminium all around, not just the external panels like on some cases, the whole frame is aluminium. Now the last thing I want to cover is price. Now for you American folks, this case currently retails on Newegg for $320. I have seen it drop down into the $200 mark somewhere, but at the moment on Newegg it's $320. For us Australian folks, it is a little bit more, pretty much double at $680. Now there's only one place I've seen it, and I'm pretty sure that is just a placeholder, and it's really hard to get this high-end Lian gear in Australia. But yeah, definitely for you US folks, it is a really good price. Now I just want to sort of cover the last few things on the build. A lot of people have talked about this black tubing. This is simply just clear 16mm PETG that I bent, got it all to size and painted matte black. I think the matte black I had was like a $4 can of matte black. I simply just covered each end, made it stand up and just sprayed it, let it sit for an hour and just threw it in, and actually complemented the build really well. Another area I did was I added a custom motherboard tray. That's a very simple setup. I just measure the sort of open space around the motherboard when the case is empty. So I throw the motherboard in, I measure around the motherboard where there's any open space I don't want to see, and then I just line up all the holes I want to be passed through, like your 24 pin, your USB 3.1, your USB 3, your PCIe cables, all that, and then I just sort of measure the tube runs and how I want it to go. Then the rear is just all looped up via just flexi tubing. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Nothing sort of really too crazy going on. I must admit, it does look really good. I am pretty happy with it. I did only spend a few days on it, but yeah, it did come out much better than how I expected. I'll just flick it on just to show you. Now it is going to show up all RGB, just all default. I have been able to play around with the lighting. If you saw the time-lapse video, I did have it set as white. That was one option I could have it, and that's blowing straight in my face. Yeah, it did have it white, which looked really cool. And this is just your decked out RGB sort of solution. But yeah, it was good in the time-lapse video to be able to show you the differences between something like this, the matte black setup with all RGB, and then the matte black was sort of all white lighting. Even the Barrow CPU block was white. Even the G-Skill Trident Z RGB memory was white, and it just looked really nice. Now, I had a few people ask about this Barrow. This is a Barrow flow meter, really nice little flow meter. Just make sure if you do pick it up, make sure you have the flow going the right way. Now you can reverse it. Sadly for me, I just threw it in, wasn't even thinking. I threw it in to get this, you can only have the screen orientated one way. I threw it in and it was showing zero flow. And then I had a quick look online, but you have to unscrew the 4 screws on each end, and then you just simply reverse the little sort of turbine thing that creates the flow. And once you do that, throw it back together and you will start seeing your flow. But yeah, that's pretty much it on this video, on this case. Very nice case. I want to thank Lian for sending this out. I want to thank you guys for watching, and stay tuned for the next video.